Hi, welcome back to the Overland Legend and to my series on restoring a legend. I'm Alan. It's been a couple of weeks and not much progress, unfortunately, but that's the nature of a restoration, and you don't always have things going your way, and you find out that some things that you didn't really work out, and some things you should have done and you didn't do, and that's how it goes. So in today's episode, I'm going to cover some tips and tricks about doing a restoration and starting a restoration, and some of the pitfalls you can avoid and watch out for. So that's what we'll look at. So enjoy it. Okay, first tip is you need to be up to it. I think you need to take a good, long, hard look at yourself in the mirror. If you scroll through the adverts for used vehicles, you'll often come across half restorations or even unstarted restorations. Many people start these projects without knowing what to expect. The dream of a fully restored classic car and the excitement of a finished project is what gets them started. But between the beginning and the end, there's a minefield of hard work, frustration, and money spent. The restoration will almost always turn out to take longer and cost more than you think. If you have never done one before, then this is a serious consideration that you need to make. Spend the time to understand exactly what you are in for and how long it will take. The best strategy is to expect the worst case scenario so that you can prepare yourself mentally. If you are in a rush to do it, then you need to be able to put in the time to get it finished. But don't be unrealistic with that time expectation, otherwise you'll become despondent. In my experience, it always costs more and takes longer than you think. Okay, so that brings us to the second tip, which is decide on a time frame and a strategy and a budget. It's also not a good idea to have endless time. My recent project has not really been time bound, because I decided to tackle it as a long-term project. The reason being that I only have so much time to allocate to it, and it would help spread out the cost over time. The risk with this approach is that it takes so long that you lose interest. So I've had to find the sweet spot between having enough regular progress without making it feel onerous. As I've started to get into the assembly process, I can feel the pace picking up. I think this is natural. As you start to see more and more progress and the dream becomes more of a reality, you feel more motivated. One of the biggest considerations in doing a restoration is how much do you outsource. Doing everything yourself will take a lot of your own time and make your restoration take a long time. On previous rebuilds, I've done everything myself. However, when I tackled this Series 1 project, I eventually realized that if I don't outsource, it's going to take me too long. Also, if I wanted better quality, then it would be better for someone else, more skilled, to do it. This has increased the cost significantly, but also decreased the time. So I've focused mostly on the disassembly and reassembly. The cheapest way to do a restoration is to do everything yourself. Not just the assembly and disassembly, but also the repair work. Assembly and disassembly is easy for anyone who has the tools and experience of working on cars. It's the repair work to the chassis, the firewall and the body parts that's at another level and requires additional skill and tools. If you can't do this yourself, then you will have to outsource it, and you will probably have an additional cost for that. Okay, on to tip number 3. Choose the vehicle if you can. I'm sure you know what you want to redo, or maybe you just want to rebuild an old Land Rover. But the choices really are, there's so many choices, and sometimes maybe you just stumble across this amazing opportunity that you just can't let it go by. But you must know that you always do have a choice, because it's important to choose the right type of vehicle for a rebuild, because it could mean the difference between finishing the rebuild or not finishing the rebuild. And when you choose a vehicle, you really need to know what type of a vehicle you're choosing, because they're not all the same. So my experience has been doing the Series 1. I've always wanted to do a Series 1, but my dad had warned me about how different a Series 1 is. And I've rebuilt a couple of vehicles, mostly Series 2s. And you really can't believe the difference between a Series 1 and a Series 2. And you know, these small differences really add up after a while. And so you do need to make sure that you know the difference between those vehicles, and that you account for that. If I had a choice, I would really honestly choose a Series 2, a 3, or maybe even a Defender, because the parts are just so much more easily available, and they're much more common. But obviously a Series 1 is really unique, so it takes a lot extra, it's a lot of extra cost. So just know the difference and know what you're getting yourself into. The most important part of the choice is the completeness and originality of the vehicle. This is more important than the actual condition. If you are doing a chassis up restoration, then you are going to fix and repair everything anyway, so the condition is less important. But if you are sitting with missing, broken or modified parts, then things get complicated and expensive. When items are broken or missing, do some research to understand if they are easily available or and to be replaced. Doing a proper in-depth assessment of the condition of your project vehicle is also important. The more assumptions you make, the more you will be surprised by the work that needs to be done and additional cost. My project vehicle I got for nothing. It was about 80% complete, but it turns out that the chassis was recoverable, although I did have to do quite a lot of work. And then I thought the firewall was also recoverable, but on closer inspection, that actually wasn't, and basically had to be remade. So if the vehicle is in running condition and is complete, then it's a much simpler task to restore it. All of the parts can be dismantled, cleaned and then reassembled, and perhaps some worn items can be replaced. Building an engine and a gearbox is a bit more complicated again, so if you can't do that yourself, then outsourcing will cost you a bit more. When you have a vehicle that's not running, or worst case has been abandoned like the one I've got, then you have a real challenge. This will usually mean that the disassembly is a lot more difficult because there could be severe rust or even damaged items. The repair of these items will again require specialist tools just to remove them and then to restore them. Sourcing replacement parts can be both difficult and expensive. Okay, the fourth tip is learn and research about the vehicle. In order to choose a vehicle properly, you really do need to know what you are looking at. So learning about the vehicle is crucial. Once you have decided on a vehicle that you want to restore, you need to start learning about it. I've rebuilt many Series 2 Land Rovers, but never a Series 1. I thought that I knew a lot, which I did, but I also realized that there's a lot that I didn't know. Throughout the rebuilding process, you will learn what you didn't know, and the sooner you can do that, the better. Now that I'm trying to source the parts to put it together again, I'm learning what all the parts are and realizing what I have and don't have. If you don't do your research and understand your particular model in detail, you may not fully understand whether the vehicle is original or modified. Once you are restoring, you will end up buying or fitting the wrong parts, which can be costly and a waste of time. If your vehicle is not 100% original, or you're not going to keep it original, then you really do need to pay attention to the details. As soon as something is not original, you will run into compatibility problems, and they tend to snowball as one thing leads to another. As an example, I decided to use a spare set of axles I had that was supposedly off a Series 3 short wheelbase. I've ended up having to change the backing plates to fit the brakes for a long wheelbase, and have had to change the steering arms because they don't fit the rest of the steering. What seemed like an easy change by just using some axles that I had wasn't necessarily that easy. It's not the end of the world, but be aware and you need to prepare for it. I assembled these axles ages ago, and when I came to connect the drag link onto the steering, it seems like it's too long. That these drop arms that are on these axles are not the right ones, because the offset between these two holes are too wide. So it should be narrower. Like if you look at this one, it's not so wide. And so if I had this on, then it would be out further and it would fit. So yeah, so I don't know why these arms are different like this. They shouldn't be. They're from a Series 3, and these are Series 3 axles, and I checked everything, it should fit, but apparently it doesn't. So that's just, yeah, when you're trying to change things and modify things, then sometimes you've got these things that happen and they're just not right. So, but anyway, so now I need to take these off and just redo them. Then we can put it back together again. Okay, looks like we're sorted now. Put this this lower steering arm on and everything fits there. So it's looking good. It's about sort of lined up over here. So yeah, I think that solved the problem, luckily. All sorted. Okay, now number 5. Pay attention during disassembly. It would have been better for me to know this information before I started, especially during the disassembly stage. If you know the value and the purpose of the parts during disassembly, then you will be more careful. I learned the hard way where I broke the steering control tube on the Series 1 because I didn't understand how to remove it. It was unnecessary and a careless mistake. Also, I seem to have lost some of the dash parts because I was thinking of replacement rather than restoration. This is important because many of the parts can be restored if you treat them gently. Many of these parts are either difficult to find or expensive to buy. You might think that you will just replace them with new parts, but this can really increase the cost of the restoration. And finding replacement parts can also be very difficult. Often the remanufactured parts are not as good as the originals anyway. So if at all possible, the restoration of the original part, although time consuming, may be the best option. Another reason to pay attention during disassembly is that you may have some parts that are not original. So taking all the care to repair them only to find out that they are not original is also a waste of time and money. The tricky thing with Land Rovers is that many of the parts are interchangeable between the models, but at the same time some of the parts look the same but are of different dimensions depending on the year model. So you need to carefully identify each part to know what it is. Initially it does seem very daunting, but because the early vehicles are so simple, it's actually easier than you think to become familiar with all the parts. Okay, on to number 6, which is label and catalogue your parts. It's a good idea to start some sort of a labeling and sorting method for all the parts that you disassemble. It may seem obvious or tedious when you're taking it apart, but when you need to assemble them in a couple of months or even sometimes in a couple of years' time, you'll be grateful for an organized, labeled selection of parts. Disassembly is the easiest and the fastest part of the restoration process. It will take more than double that time to put it back together again. It'll also be worthwhile to get the relevant parts catalogue or workshop manual so that you can know how to take things off and how to put them back in the right place. Number 7 is disassemble and clean everything and then take stock. Take the time to do this because it can literally save you months and thousands. It's timely and difficult and complicated, but it really is worth it. Once you have everything apart, then you need to assess all the components and decide what you want to clean and repair and what you want to replace with new or used parts. Sometimes though, you do have to clean in order to assess the condition properly. This is also a good time to assess if you want to upgrade or modify anything on the vehicle or change the configuration. Small inexpensive items should just be replaced with new because the time in cleaning and fixing becomes limiting. Larger, more expensive parts can be restored to almost new if they are structurally sound and just need some cosmetic work. Chassis repair is often the big part of the restoration project. To repair or replace rusted and damaged sections with new metal pieces welded into place for strength. My experience has been to clean and paint everything first before reassembling. I initially did it piece by piece, but then I realized that I had missed some parts for cleaning or just simply had some parts missing. So my recommendation would be to strip everything down, clean, assess and replace where necessary. Then measure and also mock assemble to make sure that you have all the parts that you will need to fit, and then only you can continue to reassemble. Okay, tip number 8 is keep a record of everything you do with pictures or video. It's always nice to have the project like this documented in the end so that you can show people, but it's also very useful for you during the process, especially if you're recording the fitment and condition of the unrestored items. You will refer to these all the time for various reasons. Keeping track of the progress is also a big motivator, and you can reflect on how much you've done. Sharing this via social media is quite common and popular. This also helps with the motivation because other people are following and ask about how it's going. It keeps you a little bit more accountable, and also you make contact with others on the same journey, so you can share your battles and also get some assistance when needed. Okay, second last tip, number 9, is you'll have good days and you'll have bad days. You know, the nature of a restoration is that it's completely unpredictable. It's really like a huge adventure. And some days you make great progress, other days or weeks or even months, you just don't seem to make any progress. As you struggle to find the parts that you need, or you find out that you've put the wrong stuff on, you need to take something off and redo it, or it just takes you forever to get a job done. Either getting some things off take you forever, something breaks, or trying to put something on. You just struggle and struggle to put it on. So yeah, it's really an up and down battle, and really the time that it takes is often the thing for, especially for a DIY rebuild, is the thing that it's that's really the difficult part. It's only those slick restorers that are doing the same model over and over again that know exactly what to expect. But if you're switching and swapping between different types of vehicles and you've done one, or this is your first one, it's going to be an up and down battle. But that's part of it, and really the reward is once you finish things and you reach those milestones. So don't give up. You just have to smile, take a break, take some time off, ask for some help, and then get back on it. So yeah, don't be worried. Up and down is how it'll go. It's not smooth sailing, but when you get towards the end, it's really worth it. Okay, so this brings us to the last tip, number 10. Know what you're aiming for. This is a long process, as I said, and you really need to have that vision and that end goal in mind. So know exactly what your vehicle must look like, and use that as your motivation. And keep that as your end goal, and let it keep you going. You know, celebrate the wins as you go along, because every time you get something done, every step of progress is a win, and celebrate those milestones. Some of the milestones for me that have really been great has been that painted chassis that I had. Then when I got this firewall painted, and when I fitted that firewall, putting the engine together, getting the engine on, getting it started. Those have all been big milestones, and the next ones for me are going to be to get the rolling chassis going, then to get the wiring done. I think is going to be quite a big one, and then the next big one is going to be to get this chassis running and actually go for that first test drive. You know, those famous test drives where you go without the body on, just sitting on the fuel tank, and seeing this vehicle go by itself after such a long time. So those are the things that you need to look forward to, and celebrate those milestones as you get them, and let that be the motivation, and that's really why we do it, to get to that end point. So keep track of that, enjoy it, and yeah, celebrate it, and look forward, and keep looking at that final picture of what you're looking at, because it's the thing that keeps you going. Okay, so there you have it. Those were my tips for a rebuild and a restoration. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, let's keep going, and this is what I've learned so far, and I'm sure I'll share some more stuff as I go along. Looking forward to sharing the next steps of progress. So once again, if you enjoyed my video, please like it. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you enjoy it and you think someone else will enjoy it, please share it. And I look forward to sharing more with you on this journey of restoring a legend. Thanks and cheers.